In this module, we are going to be talking about Deming's 14 points. Now, Deming's 14 points were actually postulated before he came up with his system of profound knowledge. So, in a way, his system of profound knowledge was a refinement or a summary, if you will, of his 14 points. And as we will see Deming's 14 points, what we will observe is that there is a lot of what has already been discussed as part of his 4 different elements of the system of profound knowledge. I will go through the 14 points relatively quickly, and there will be a few points that I would like to spend a little bit of more time on, but basically what you will see is the fact that a lot of the explanation of the 14 points has already been covered under the system of profound knowledge. Deming's first point talks about the creation, or he says you need to create a constancy of purpose towards improvement of product and service with the aim to become competitive and to stay in business and to provide jobs. Now, we already discussed this when we saw the Deming's chain reaction, where he says that companies tend to lose sight of what their objective is, and they keep on flip-flopping, going from one to the other, with the result that people working in those organizations are confused and don't know ultimately what is expected of them, with the result that you have disillusioned people whose performance is below par, and the performance of the organization overall is also far from perfect, or far from what is desirable. The second point says adopt the new philosophy. We are in a new economic age, and of course he was addressing the Western management, but the same thing can be true for any management. Management must awaken to the challenge, must learn their responsibilities, and take on leadership for change. That means that the old methods do not work, and we need to really do a re-evaluation of everything that we have been doing so far and take the new approach which makes sense for us and assume a leadership role, because unless we do that, the organization will not move in the right direction. The third point is cease dependence on inspection to achieve quality. This goes back to the way in which we used to think of quality as merely inspecting the bad parts out. So you don't need to waste the resources by producing bad quality first, and number 2, by adding more resources to sort out the bad parts from the good. So you need to focus on producing good parts to begin with. So build quality into the product itself. Number 4, it's ending the practice of awarding business on the basis of price tag alone. Most of the time companies have the policy that you have competitive bids from different vendors, and you give the contract to the person who has the lowest unit price. So instead of looking at a unit price, you need to talk about total cost, and that total cost includes the cost of quality, it includes the cost of delivery. You want to make sure you have confirmed delivery, and you need to ensure that you have very high quality of the incoming parts, because without that the worker on the shop floor can do very little in terms of improving the output. Move towards a single supplier for any one item on a long-term relationship of loyalty and trust. In the past, we used to have, we used to try and set suppliers against each other to try and compete against each other. And he says, as opposed to that, you need to build partnerships and relationships over a period of time, because that is going to ensure long-term quality for the product, and a relationship which can be leveraged in terms of bringing the supplier in to help develop new products and new processes which can help improve the quality and lower costs. Improve constantly and forever the system of production and service to improve quality and productivity and thus constantly decrease costs. I think we have already discussed this. Then he says institute training on the job, because most of the time we don't really give enough training to a person, a new person who comes on the job, and we literally throw the person into the job and expect them to learn, with the result that there is really no proper way in which the job has to be done, and the person learns on his own, and there is no formal training, which is something which needs to be corrected. You need to institute leadership. The whole idea of a supervisor or a manager is to help the person who is reporting to them. If the person who reports to a supervisor or a manager does not understand or does not have the tools or has some problem with regard to the way in which a job needs to be done, it is the role of the supervisor or the manager to help the person so that the job can be done in a better manner and so that the total output from the system can improve. Number 8 is something that I love. It says drive out fear so that everyone may work effectively for the company. Now what that means is that a lot of times when we have people working in organizations, people are afraid to take risks, because with risk comes the possibility of failure, and anytime there's a failure, people are afraid because they are going to be penalized. So with the result that nobody is willing to take chances, nobody is willing to try something new, and therefore the system does not improve. You never have a person getting punished for not trying something new. You always have somebody who will get punished for trying something for which the result did not come out as intended. So what Deming talks about here is the fact that you need to drive the fear out. The management and the leadership of organizations need to encourage people to take calculated chances, calculated risks using the PDSA cycle, so that they are able to improve the system by a systematic manner of plan, do, study and act. Number 9 says break down barriers within departments, because you have the typical organizational structure where you have organizational silos where people are working at cross purposes, and you need to have the people working as a team. So you need to have various departments finding ways to cut across the organizational boundaries. You need to eliminate slogans and exhortations. You don't just go out there and say, we will cut costs by 10% without explaining how that will be achieved. And asking for targets of individuals creates adversarial relationships, and what you find is that as we saw in the case of the common causes and the special causes, is that a large amount of the responsibility of bringing about changes and improvements in the system lies with management, and there is very little that can be really something that workers can contribute to. So management needs to take responsibility and accountability for those changes. And so the two things that you see over here is eliminate quotas on the factory floor, substitute leadership so that people understand what the job is, they are helped to improve their particular task and their job and the output, and eliminate management by objective. This is again one of the more controversial of Deming's points, because it says the moment you set numerical goals, people find ways to play the numbers games. It is not as though the system actually is improving, but people find ways to make themselves look good based on the measurement system that we have in place, and that is not good. Remove barriers that rob the hourly worker of his right of pride of workmanship. This we discussed when we talked about the psychology of individuals. remove barriers that rob people in management and in engineering to the right of pride of workmanship. So it talks about not just the people on the shop floor, but it also talks about people in management and in engineering, and it criticizes the merit rating and management objective. Again, this is again discussed when we were talking about the forces of destruction that Deming talked against. Institute a vigorous program of education and self-improvement. What he's saying is that over a period of time, it is not just that you require training at the beginning when a new person comes in, but you also need to provide continuous training to individuals over a period of time so that they are able to learn new techniques, to learn new approaches, and find ways to develop themselves and put everybody in the company to work to accomplish the transformation, because he says that transformation is everybody's job. This brings me to the end of this particular lecture. What I do want to conclude very briefly with is that Deming died about close to 20 years ago, but there are still very large number of Deming followers, and the reason why we have a large number of Deming followers, unlike a whole lot of other gurus who once they pass away or if they are not in vogue at any point in time, people stop following them to that same extent, at least in management theory. Deming is unlike the other gurus, and the reason for that is because of the depth of what he talked about. If you really analyze his system of profound knowledge, if you really take a look at his 14 points, there is an entire map of what a manager needs to do if they need to, if he or she needs to improve the system within which he or she operates. With that, I conclude this session. Thank you.